There's a town in Pennsylvania with a Welsh name that means Big Hill. I'll explain how it came about as I take you on a walk through the beautiful Welsh countryside to visit some historic sites associated with the Quakers. Dolgellau is a little town situated in the south of Gwynedd in North Wales. It has a long and interesting history, but I'm going to focus on the Quakers who lived here in the 17th century and explain why some of them emigrated to America to avoid religious persecution. In 1657, George Fox visited Dolgellau while on a preaching tour around England and Wales. Fox was the founder of the Society of Friends, more usually known as Quakers. He preferred to preach in the open air, so he preached here in the centre of town. He was known as a powerful and convincing preacher, and although the local ministers came out to challenge him, he converted a lot of people to the new religion of Quakerism. Wales was almost entirely Welsh-speaking at the time, so John ap John, a Welsh-speaking Quaker, came with George Fox to help him spread his message. There isn't time in a short video to go deeply into the local Quaker history, but if you want to know more, I'll put some links in the video details. This map shows the route of the walk I did when I visited some of the places on the Quaker Trail. The first place with Quaker connections is Meirionydd, just round the corner from Eldon Square. Now a hotel, this was once the site of a prison. The current building mostly dates from around 1820. However, the basement and rear wall are relics of the town jail, where many of the local Quakers were imprisoned for their beliefs. The story of the local Quakers and how they suffered terrible persecution inspired a local author called Marian Eames to write a historical novel about the period. Ystafell Ddiogel is based on the story of a real local man named Rowland Ellis. Eames later produced an English translation, The Secret Room, which is sadly out of print. Ellis's home, Bryn Mawr, is the next place I'll talk about. It's some way out of town and involves a steep climb, but the beautiful views make it worth the effort. First, I retraced my steps to Eldon Square. Now a popular cafe, a saucepan is one of the oldest buildings in town, and at the time Rowland Ellis was alive, it would have been the town hall. One of the oldest parts of town is a lount. Eames's novel, The Secret Room, begins here, but back then there were far more cottages crowded into this space. I headed out of town up Cadder Road and then followed a bridleway. You may be wondering why Quakers, who are members of a peaceful religion, were being thrown into prison and fined heavily. The second half of the 17th century was a turbulent time in Britain. Quakers were seen as troublesome. They refused to swear oaths. For example, they refused to swear loyalty to the king. They would not attend church nor pay tithes, a contribution that everyone was supposed to pay to support the church. With such actions, persecution is inevitable. This area is known as Tir Stent. Many Quakers lived here back in the 17th century. The land is crisscrossed by many small lanes and footpaths that link the numerous farms and small holdings. The name Bryn Mawr is well known as the name of the American Women's College in the town of the same name in Pennsylvania. But this Bryn Mawr is the original. The old farmhouse here on the outskirts of Dolgellau was the birthplace in 1650 of Rowland Ellis, the man Marian Eames wrote about in The Secret Room. The house, which is up there behind the trees, was built by Rowland Ellis's grandfather. It's still a private home, so if you ever do get the chance to visit, please respect the owner's privacy. Unfortunately, it's not possible to get a good view of the house because it's hemmed in by trees, but there is an information board showing the history of Bryn Mawr and telling the story of how Rowland Ellis emigrated to America. Rowland Ellis converted to Quakerism in 1672 when he was in his early 20s. He became a valuable member, visiting neighbouring local meetings, and because he spoke English fluently, he attended meetings across the border in England. This was how he came to meet William Penn, who was busy setting up a new colony in America, and in 1686, together with his son and about 100 of his neighbours, Rowland Ellis sailed from Milford Haven to start a new life in Pennsylvania. He settled there and built a new house, which was pretty much a replica of his birthplace, and he named it Bryn Mawr. Ellis spent the rest of his life in America, and in time the name of his home became the name of the college and the town. However, not all the Quakers emigrated, and in 1689 the Act of Toleration was passed by Parliament, which meant that the persecution ceased. The next house with Quaker connections is Dewis Bryn Uchaf, the home of Dorothy Owen. This is all that remains of Dewis Bryn Uchaf, the cottage where Dorothy Owen used to live. In the second half of the 18th century, Quakerism had something of a revival in the Dolgellau area. This was largely due to a young woman called Dorothy Owen. Dorothy is a Welsh form of Dorothy. Dorothy Owen was brought up as a Quaker in a Quaker family, but when she was a young girl she rebelled and preferred the company of other young people. However, at the age of about 21, Dorothy returned to Quakerism and soon began addressing meetings. She became a strong preacher and leader, and Dewis Bryn now became the principal meeting place for the Quakers of the area rather than Tyddyn Garreg, an old farmhouse nearby. During the time she was active, numbers increased. In fact, the meeting was now so large that meetings in Quaker homes became difficult. Dorothy therefore initiated and supervised the building of a Quaker meeting house on Tyddyn Garreg land. The old meeting house at Tabor is the next place on the Quaker trail. Dorothy faithfully attended Quaker meetings regardless of the weather. In time, she came to represent the Quakers of the area at regional and even national meetings. She always travelled on foot, sometimes walking 40 miles over rough mountain tracks to attend the monthly meetings. This building was originally the Friends Meeting House built by Dorothy Owen. Sadly, she can't have attended many meetings there because she died at the young age of 42, only a year after it was completed. Unfortunately, with Dorothy no longer the driving force, the Quakers went into a gradual decline. By the middle of the 19th century, there were only 3 worshippers left. In 1854, the Independents bought the meeting house outright, with the burial ground, and it became a chapel named Tabor. All the graves here belong to members of the independent congregation. The Quakers didn't have permanent headstones. The final place I visited was Tudyn. There's a public footpath running through the yard, but this is a working farm. The old farmhouse of Tudyn is one of the homes where Quakers met during the time of persecution. In the summer of 1660, a group of armed men surrounded Tudyn and broke up a meeting of 14 Quakers that was taking place inside. All those present in the meeting were immediately arrested, hauled out of the meeting at sword point and marched towards the local prison. They were quickly released, but a few days later they were dragged from their homes, beaten, and made to walk all the way to Bala, about 18 miles away. They were kept in prison for 4 months. Once through the yard, there is a gate leading into a large open field. Over in the far corner, on the left, is a gate leading into another Quaker graveyard. As before, the Quaker graves are not visible. These later graves are those of other nonconformists. Some graves are very recent, as some local families still have the right to be buried here. During the peak of persecution in 1670, it became too dangerous to meet here at Tudyn, so meetings were held in various other homes in the area. They even met secretly outdoors in a local wood. Tudyn is the final location I visited for this video. Now there's just a walk back down the lane to Dolgellau to complete the circular walk. There are other houses in the area where the Quakers used to meet during the time of persecution, but they are some distance away. Visiting them will have to be left to another time.